Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Welcome to Dev with Excel. Alright, so in this video, we shall be solving exercise 3.12 under the saving data to MongoDB section. Alright, so in the previous video, we saw how we could deploy our application to the internet, right? So we deployed the backend which contained the dist folder from the front end, and then we integrated both, and then we deployed the backend to the internet. Alright, so in this video, we shall be looking at the command line database, which is exercise 3.12, and it says create a cloud-based MongoDB database for the PhoneBook application with MongoDB Atlas. Create a mongo.js file, so this is a JavaScript file, in the project directory that can be used for adding entries to the PhoneBook and for listing all of the existing entries in the PhoneBook. So it says, do not include a password in the file that you commit and push to GitHub. The application should work as follows. You use the program by passing three command line arguments. The first is the password. Now, this from here to this part, right? These are the three command line arguments, right? So the first one is a password. The next is this, which signifies the name, and then the third one is this, which signifies the number, right? Okay, so let's head into the code implementation and see how to do that. Firstly, we need to create a mongo.js file. All right, so this is my VS Code, and currently I have been able to create a set of folder for this exercise, which is 3.12. So here we can see command line database 312, right? So in this folder, I'm simply going to create a mongo.js file. So I'll simply just click on new file and say mongo.js, then hit enter. Now we are currently in the mongo.js file, and then what we need to do is we need to fill this with our code that helps us to solve exercise 3.12. Now, before we even write anything here, we need to ensure that we have the Mongoose library installed, right? So in my own case, I have the Mongoose library installed already. So ensure that you have this installed, because without this, you won't be able to solve this exercise, right? Okay. All right. So let's go back to FullStackOpen, and then let's see what we have in the material itself. So this is us trying to create or sign up into the Mongo Atlas, right? So that we can have a database connection, an online database connection actually. Now this is what the address looks like. This is the connection string, right? So this is similar to what we are also going to be working with. And then we install Mongoose, right? Now, this is also similar to the code we shall be writing. In fact, we could just copy this entire code and then edit it to whatever we want to edit it to. Here we can see that Mongoose was installed and then it was imported here. Here, this part is trying to give us a condition, right, to ensure that the password, the command line argument, which is the process.argv.length, if it's less than 3, then we should get this text written in the console saying give password as argument, right? So we don't want our argument to be less than 3 as it were, right? If it is, then after this whole process gets exited. Now we store our password in a variable, right, from the process.argv. Now this is coming from the command line where we are going to be putting in the password, and then we save it as a variable name. Now the variable is consumed here in the template literal here, right? So this is the string literal. So this is similar to what we are going to be doing. And then this is just a strict query of the Mongo set. And then this is the part where we connect this URL, right, in the MongoDB using the Mongoose. All right, so this part we are trying to create a schema, right? So what this schema does is that it helps to establish a connection, right, between the code and the database itself. And it also tells Mongoose the type of data coming from the objects, right? So this is also part of creating the schema also, right? So this is the model. and then we have here note, which we are also going to edit. Now this is the object itself. That's the data we'll be passing. This is an example data, right, that we are going to be passing into the database, but we may not really use this as such, but this is just to show us how it looks like. Then after everything is done, we save the whole data. In this case, it's called notes, right? We are going to be changing this as well to whatever objects we have, right? So let's head into the code implementation. Before that, we could just copy this entire code, right? And then let's go to Mongo. Let's go to our VS Code. So here, I'll simply just paste everything that I copied from the full stack open course. And then what we need to do next is this. Let's cd into this project, right? So I'll simply just copy the parts here and cd into this project. Okay, so we are currently in the command line database project right now. We can just minimize this part. We really don't need to do anything much there. All right, so here, looking at the instruction, it says that we are going to be passing data similar to this, right? So here we have a name and here we have a number, right? So we could just give the type of this name as a string and then give this number as a number or as a string, right? So that means that we can place this number as a string or we can just leave it as a string. So in this case, I'll simply just use string for both, right? So we are going to be doing some basic editing here. All right, so let's expand this. Let me save this. Now, this string is not what we are going to be using, this connection string, right? We are not going to be using this. We are going to be getting ours, right? So this is not, when we use this connection string, which is the address, right, to the MongoDB, it's not going to work for us because currently we've not set our username to be this, and also we've not set the password also. All right, so we could just leave this for now, and then after we are through with the code, we head over to the MongoDB Atlas and then we do the necessary configuration. All right, so here let's change this part from node schema to, let's say, person schema, since we are dealing with a person, right? The person has a name and a number. So let's change this part to name. Let's change this part to number. And then the number, let's give it a string data type as well. All right, so here we have a person schema. We could just copy this and then paste it here. And then here, notes, we don't want notes to be here, rather want it to be person. And then also we change this note here also to person, right? So this note here also becomes person, but starting with a lowercase, and then we copy this person here and then change it to this. Also, this part we have to remove this part and we replace it with name and number. So let's save this. So we have that now. And also this name here, this note here, we need to change this note to this person object, right? So we come here and say person, right? So that's what we have here. So what we are expected to do is that when we come here and then copy this and then paste this entire code here and then we run this. Okay, let's run this. This should not work for now because we are yet to establish the connection with the database. So when we place in this, right, here we need to change this your password to our own personal password, right? And we hit enter. We are expected to have this in the console. We are expected to have added ANA number this to PhoneBook, right? Okay. All right, so let's move on. So here we have name. It's saying name is deprecated, right? So there's a reason why this is happening like this. We need to define name. So how do we define name? Here we can see that the password here is mentioned. It was said that this password should be the first argument, right? That means that the name should be the next. As we can see here, the password is the first, the name is the next, and the number is third. So we could just come here. Let's just duplicate this into 3 parts, and then let's change this part to name, which is the second. That means its own arguments is, we give it the third index, right? And then here is number, and then we give this one the fourth index, so that this follows something like this: the first, the second, and the third, which we have here. Okay, let's go back here and then check if name is yes. So here we can see that name is properly, it's working now, right? There's no issue with it right now. Okay, so we are going to be working on this string next. But before then, let's save this code. All right, so this code is saved now. And like I said, ensure you have Mongoose installed. When you check my package.json, you see that Mongoose is installed here, right? So this is set. All right, so the next thing we need to do is we need to go to the MongoDB cloud, that's the Atlas, and then we set the configuration for the connection string and all. So the first thing we need to do is we can just come here to create a new project. So giving the project a name, we can just call this person. Let's see what we call this. Okay, let's just call it person app to keep things very short and simple. Person app. So let's hit next. So next you want to do is you can just come here to create project. So let's give this time as it's trying to load. All right, so that's done. The next thing we need to do is to create a cluster. So this is very important as well. Let's create the cluster, and then it's asking us for a cluster name. We can leave it as cluster 0. There's no issue with that. And after all is done, we can leave this ones as default, and then we click create deployment. Okay, so okay, I think we selected the part we are supposed to pay. Okay, um I'm not sure we're supposed to have this. Let's go back. I think we've done something wrong. Okay, this part, yes. Okay, so we did something wrong in this part. Here we went to select the pay as you go option, right? This part is the pay per operation, right? Why this part is free, right? So if you want to pay for these services, you could either choose one of these two, right? But if you want it for free, of course, with limited features as well, we select this free, right? So we have this cluster 0, we can leave the rest as they are. Then we create deployment. So that's happening. So let's just give it some time. All right, so at this point now, it says you need to secure your MongoDB Atlas cluster before you can use it. Set which users and IP addresses can access your cluster now. All right, so let's allow access from anywhere, right? Now, this is a small project and we can take that risk to access from everywhere. It doesn't really hurt this project. So we simply just select that and then we click on add IP address. Okay, so this is done. And then let's set a username and a password. So for the username, I could just say Excel. And for the password, I could just say dev with Excel, right? So there's no risk here, me showing this, right? Because after this whole video, I'll simply just destroy the cluster and the project itself. So this is not going to mean anything. So we click on create database user. Don't forget, username is Excel, password is dev with Excel. So we create database user. Okay, all right. So that is created, and then we choose a connection method. All right. So here we could just choose drivers, and then what we are very concerned with now is this address, right? This is the connection string that helps us to work with the code. So we copy this, copied, and then we click done. Awesome. So that's done with this part. And then we go back to our VS Code and let's close this package JSON. Now here we are going to be replacing this connection string with the one we copied from Mongo Atlas. So I'm doing that right away. All right, so that is done. And then this password aspect, we are supposed to push dev with Excel here directly. If this was to be put in a .env file, right, it was saved, we could just do it this way. But at this point, we've already declared that we are getting our password from the command line and then it's passed into this variable name called password. So what we can do is we simply just come here, and since this is a template string, you can see we have the backticks here. We could easily just do something like this because we are working with a string literal, right? And then write password. So this password here, it represents the password from the command line here, right? So we hit save. All right, I think we are good to go. Let's run this and see. Now here we simply just come here. Okay, let's close that. All right, so here we are simply just going to come here and then remove this your password and then change it to dev with Excel, right? So let's hit enter. Let's see what comes up. All right, so here it says note saved. All right, so that worked fine. That worked fine. Let's go to the Mongo Atlas. Let's see if we have that in our database. Let's click on database. So let's just wait for this as it comes up. This is going to take some time to come up, right? But while that is doing that, or let's just simply refresh it again and see. Sometimes it does that way. Okay, so let's give it some time. All right, so let's click on browse collection. All right, so you can see that we have tests and we have people. Now this is called tests because we've not given our database a name, right? So this is what we passed in from the command line, Anna04 and all that. All right, so let's give our database a name so that we won't be having test.people here anymore. We are simply going to have the name of our database. So we could just come here and then in between this slash and the question mark, we could just write person app, right? So that's all there is to do there. And then the next thing we want to do is we don't want this to return not saved, right? Rather, we want this to return the name of the person and the number of the person that was saved. So we could just remove this entire part and then use a string literal. Now, using the string literal, we simply just say, just as it was given to us in the FullStackOpen, in the FullStackOpen, we want something like this to come up, right? Added, then the name, then the number to phone book, right? So we simply just come here and say added. Now the name, we have to use this and then we pass in the name and then we say number and then also we do something like this and then the next thing you want to write is, I think it's written there as to phone book. So let's save this. All right, so the next thing we want to do now is let's add another data. Let's see what we have here. um okay, so let's add this person, right? Add to, right? Let's copy this and then let's paste it here and then let's change our password again to what we have in the Mongo Atlas. So this is going to be dev with Excel and then let's hit enter. Okay, so here we can see that we no longer have this note saved, rather we have added ATO number this to phone book, right? So this is exactly how it's, or this is exactly how we are expected to make it work, which we can see here, right? Now, let's expand this again and let's see what next we need to do. It says that the new entry to the phone book will be saved to the database. Notice that if the name contains white space characters, it must be enclosed in quotes, right? So if your name has a space in between, you enclose it with quotes, right? All right. So now, if the password is the only parameter given to the program, meaning that it is invoked like this. So if you run something like this with just our password without the name of the person and the number, it's going to return to us every data of every person and their number, right? So let's add one more data. So let's just come in and say we want to add, let's say we have 096 dash 76543 2. So we have something like this, right? And then let's say 1. And then let's change the name to, let's say Excel, right? Then we say dev. Let's hit enter. Now it says added Excel dev number this to phone book. Now let's check the MongoDB and see if we have those in the database. So let's refresh here. Okay, so we are done with this kind of. You can see that here we have person app because we actually give the name of our database person app in the connection string. Remember? So here we could just click on this part and then click people. And here we can see we have person app.people, right? Now here we can see that we have these two data, right, in the database. Let's add Anna to it. So let's just add Anna. So that should be take any time. All right, so this is Anna here. So let's hit enter. All right, it says added Anna number this to phone book. All right, so here we come here to refresh so that we can see the latest changes we have in the database. So here we can see we have Atto, Excel, and Anna here, right? Now, the next exercise is trying to ask us that if we pass in just the password without the name and the number, we should have something like this, right? So this is what we shall be doing next. Let's see if that is going to work. So let's do something like this. Let's remove this data from here and then let's hit enter. All right, so it says added undefined number undefined to phone book because it's not seeing any data to be returned because we need to write the code to ensure that, right? So here, what we can do here is that from the database, we need to find data, right, and return necessary information. Now, this is representing the data from the database, right, person. So we say dot find. Find is a method, right, and then we put in empty object, right? And using the then, we say then, and inside then we pass in a parameter. Let's call it result or anything you choose to call it, right? Then we have something like this, right? So next thing we want to do is we are going to say console.log, and then here we have phone book and something like this. Now this is a string. This is the text which we have here. Let me just scroll this up. That's the text we have here, phone book here, right? So this is it here. So when we are done with that, the next we want to do is we need to iterate through the data we have in the database so that we can return just the name and the number of each person, right? So what we need to do next is this. We need to say the result we have here, right? And then say dot for each. So here we are using the for each, right? And then we give it a data, or sorry, we give it a parameter. Let's call it person. Is person a good name to call? Let's give it person, and then let's have something like this. Here we are going to be console logging just the name and the number. So using a template string, right? We simply just do something like this, and then we pass in the person's name. So we say person dot name. Don't forget that person is an object which we got from here, right? So to get this name, we simply say person dot name. To get the number, we say person dot number, right? So that's what we are doing here. So we say the next thing we do is we do the same for number. We say person dot number. So let's save this, right? So having done this, what we need to do next is we need to close this entire connection, right? You can see we've been closing the Mongoose connection for this part. We close the Mongoose connection after having this, right? And also, okay, so here we are going to be doing the same thing. So I will simply just duplicate this part of the code and then take this somewhere here. All right, so this is okay. Now let's try to see if we can get the data we have in the database. So here we can see that we have this data in the database. Let me do something like this. This is not clear enough. All right, so these are the data we have in the database, right? So let's see how we can get them. So when we come here and then we do something like this, let's close this. We do something like this. Oh, excuse me. All right, so let's do something like this. Now this is the Okay, so now this is the code that was supposed to help us to return all the data we have in the database, but now it's giving us some kind of error. Let's see what the error is saying. It's saying new error, okay, topology is closed and all that. Now, this is giving us this error because at this point, it's thinking we are trying to save an undefined data because we didn't pass in any names or numbers, right? We only use the password and then it closed the connection. That means this part of the code is going to give some issues, and that's why we are having this error here. So what we can do is, for us not to have this kind of action being done, we can just comment this. And since we have the data in the database already, when we run this code, the Mongoose connection will not be closed. But when it gets here, it helps us to find data, right? And after it's found the data, it closes the connection. Let's see if this works. Hopefully it works. If it doesn't work, then we debug. All right. Okay, awesome. So here we can see that we have PhoneBook, Atto, Excel, Anna, right? So this undefined, they are data we actually got when we pushed in this code at first without having this line of code written, right? And also before we commented this, right? So we actually pushed in an undefined name and undefined number. That's why we have this, right? So to push in data again without having to fetch the data from database, we could just comment this and then be pushing data to the database, right? But that's not the best thing to actually do, right? So what we can actually do is we can just simply just write some code, right? That is going to help us to get that working fine, right? So we could just use the if else conditional statement. So let's do something like this. Before we do that, let's see if we can make this, if we can use the catch block, right? Since we have the then here, let's also use the catch block on this part first before we use the else statement, right? So what we can do here is we simply just come here and say catch. So we are going to be catching errors should there be any, right? So we do something like this. We say catch error, and then we say console.log. Let's use console.error, right? And then this is going to say error saving the person, right? And then we also log the error itself. So after that, we close the connection, right? So I'm simply just going to duplicate this again and then push this one here. Okay, so let's save this. All right, so we have this, and then we are going to be doing the same thing for this part too, right? So we could just copy what we have here. Let's just copy what we have here, and then let's paste it here as well. So let's save this, and then here we could just change this to error fetching the person data, something like that. So let's save this. Now I want to believe that when we run the code now, whichever way, we shouldn't have any issues anymore. By the way, let's remove this undefined from the database so we don't see them as our results, right? So we could just come here and then let's refresh first. So this is refreshing, and then we have, let's drag this part down. So here we have empty data here, so we could just delete. That's deleted, and also we delete this. No, not this. Sorry, not Anna, but this. All right, so now we have three items in the data now. All right, so now let's come here and then let's run this code. Let me just close this and then let's run this code. Now this should work fine, I believe. This is giving us error. Okay, sorry, we forgot to use the else statement, right? So after this part here, after we've done this, we need to use the else statement. And how do we use the else statement? We simply just come here. um could just use the else statement after the console.log. After this part, yes. Okay, so for us to use the else statement, we need to use an if first. So let's let's use it from here, right? So let's say if name and number, right? So if if the name and number are passed in, right? So here we simply just copy this and we place it into this part. So let's have this here. I just hope I'm not making this code worse. All right, so also we need to push in this entire part also into this else statement, right? So we could just remove this curly brace and then place it here. Okay, so I think this is okay. Then we need to say else. Now, else, what do we need to put? We need to place in this one into the else statement. So we could just cut this from here and then paste it here. So I understand that this is a bit rough, right? But this is what we just have to do. Else, if you don't use the if else statement, the if else condition, you could just comment on this part of the code if you want to push data to the database, and if you want to fetch data from the database, you simply comment this part of the code, right? Or better still, we use the if else conditional statement. All right, so let's try this again. Hope this works now. All right, this works fine now. So here we can see Atto, Excel, and here we see have undefined. So nothing to worry about here, right? So I think with this, we've been able to solve exercise 3.12 successfully. All right, so let's go to the instruction again and see if we are not missing out or on any part of it. So it says Then the program should display all of the entries in the phone book here, which we have, right? It says do not close the connection in the wrong place. Yes, we didn't do that. And then so it says if you define a model with the name person, Mongoose will automatically name the associated collection as people. Yes. So it helps to it's what no whatever name you give to the model, it becomes the plural of it, right? Because it accepts more than just one item of that model, right? So with this, guys, I hope we've been able to successfully run this code, and I hope this was helpful. If you think this video was helpful, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel, right? So see you in the next video. Bye.